Well, this is for your pre-registration coursework and for on research presentation organized by the VNSGU. First of all, let me compliment the Veer Narmad South Gujarat University and thank in person Dr. Professor Rajesh Patel, a good friend of mine for many years now, for inviting me to deliver a talk on selected reporting and misinterpretation of data, which is actually a very important topic in the field of scientific research, in the field of research in any form of allied humanities or social sciences or even economics. I am Dr. Devkar from MS University of Baroda, and here I am starting with my presentation. Now, I will give you some basic information in the form of textbook knowledge, and then we go into the much details of it, right? Now, there is this term I found out from internet, which I thought I'll share it with you. It's something called as spinning. Okay. Now, what is this spinning all about? Now, spin has been defined as a specific intentional or unintentional reporting that fails to faithfully reflect the nature and range of findings and that could affect the impression and results produced in the readers. Now, well, heavy words, but if I try to simplify it, what does it mean? It means that it's not necessary that you have done a mistake or an error intentionally. It can be an unintentional omission or commission of a particular data which makes it sound very different. Means uska meaning pura change ho jata hai. It becomes totally different, right? So this is one thing which is very important so far. Misinterpretation is concerned, right? So that is misinterpreted. These are allied, similar words, but having very different meanings. Like misinterpretation, wrong interpretation, right? Misinterpretation is something which you do by mistake. Wrong interpretation can be by mistake and can be deliberate also, right? Like I'll give you a simple example. Vadodara has witnessed less rain this year. Now, when I am saying less rain this year, I am comparing it with the last year. So, but if I am comparing the rainfall that is being received by Vadodara this year versus 5 years ago when there was again less rainfall, then you will say, well, kahan barish to barabar hai. It's perfectly fine. There's no problem, right? So there comes a wrong comparison. Now this wrong comparison, which has been written here, that is specific intentional or unintentional reporting. Now this comparison with 5-year-old data might be unintentional. That is, you have taken it absolutely in a very honest sense, or it might be deliberate. Like you do not want to give a report that the rainfall is less, right? So this is a very simple example that I've given. So on the basis of this, let's move forward. So spin could be unconscious or unintentional. Now reporting results in a manuscript implies to some choices, but about which data analyzed are reported and how data are reported and how they should be interpreted, okay, is very important. At the end I have written, and what rhetoric is used, right? Means, do you really, is there a rhetoric associated, or do you want to create a rhetoric, right? Like if you're trying to create a rhetoric that Vadodara never witnesses any scanty rainfall at all, okay, kabhi barish Baroda mein kam hoti nahi hai. So you selectively compare years as the prior controls when the rainfall has been very normal, right? Now, when we go into the details of this, I'll give you examples from different fields of science and also from allied science. This was like from the atmospheric and earth sciences. I'm giving an example. Basically, I'm a biological scientist, so excuse me for giving more number of examples from the field of biology. Yeah. Now, actually, this slide, which I'm showing you now, is the crux or the basis of my entire talk. Okay, the spectrum of research practice. One is how it should be done, means it should be, whatever research you're doing, it should be relevant, it should be valid, it should be reproducible, and it should be efficient. Right? Now, every word is not simply a word from English, but every word has got a meaning which we need to understand in its true sense. Like giving an example, suppose if any one of your student is doing research on the on a, say COVID, corona, right? Is doing research on patients infected with COVID-19 and is collecting the data. Is it relevant? Yes, very much relevant. Okay, is it relevant? Yes, very much relevant. If any person in Gujarat is doing research on diabetes, is it relevant? Yes. Okay. But if anyone does, this was spinning that I was talking about, right? And in spinning, what I told was the error can be unintentional or intentional. And what is the effect of spinning? It depends on what rhetoric you're trying to use, what you're trying to create. Now, this is the important slide that I was referring to, right? This is an important slide that I was referring to. And this slide actually talks about uh, how the spectrum of research practice has various facets, right, which are associated with wrong, correct, erroneous, or any other form of errors in research. So let us understand everything one by one. Talking about there is no question of COVID-19, but to study on a COVID-19 medicine is not a valid option anymore, right? If at all, if a virus is there, it might be a new virus that comes in. So studying virology is relevant, but studying specifically SARS-CoV-19 is not relevant. Then the important thing, reproducible. Everybody talks about reproducibility of the data. Whether or not a vaccine which is effective in one person will be effective in everyone is the question. So can the result be reproduced again and again and again? You should be able to get the same result. That is called as the reproducibility of the data. Now, a person from your group who might be a social scientist, or who might be from humanities, like you conduct a survey, right? Survey can be like anything. How many in the population are using a geo connection, or is using a Vodafone connection? So Geo versus Vodafone, which are the more number of users, right? So, well, assuming that Geo is more popular and more people are there in Geo, you are selectively searching for an area where you know there are more Vodafone users, right? So then you become you're kind of becoming a bias. You're taking a bias. So if you've produced a result, if anyone else does the same survey of counting the number of people who are using the connections, the reproducibility of the data is questioned, because then the result will be something else. So consistently, the person should be able to arrive onto the same conclusion is important so far reproducibility of the data is concerned. And the fourth is the efficiency, right? So it should be the entire process should be efficient enough. It should not be so slow, slaggy, it is so much error prone. Okay, it should be efficient. So this all four things together, it forms what is called as responsible conduct of research, RCR, right? So whether or not you're conducting your research responsibly is important, right? Okay, so what are the errors so far research practice is concerned? Sloppy science. Sloppy science means, અરે મને તો ખબર જ નહોતી. ઓકે, આ થઈ ગયું છે, આનું આ ઇઝ ઇટ ડન, इसका रिजल्ट हो गया है, इस पे स्टडी हो गया है, मुझे तो पता ही नहीं था, राइट? सो अ पर्सन हु इज डूइंग पुअर लिटरेचर सर्वे, अ पर्सन हु इज नॉट नेट savvy at all, who depends on others, भाई जरा મને શોધી આપને, राइट? those types, So he's not doing a thorough literature survey, often will come into a sloppy form of data, right? So that is called as ignorance. भाई मेरे को पता ही नहीं था, मैंने खबर ज नहोती, but that is again wrong. Okay, then there is something called as honest error, कि भाई तम भूल થઈ गई, you were not knowing, but it was a mistake, but it was an honest error, जानबूझ के नहीं किया, it is an honest error. And the third is dubious integrity, right? You have a doubt, okay, whether it can be integrated, इसको लेना नहीं लेना, so तुम्हारा you are not sure इस data को क्या करना है, and you have integrated in the main, and then your entire experiment goes wrong, your entire results go wrong. So that is called as questionable research practice. Okay, QRP, questionable research practice. So this is the third, the second important thing. And the third is, second was scientific sloppy science, and the third is scientific fraud. Scientific fraud is actually a bigger mistake, right? Here the person knows वो क्या कर रहा है, क्या गलत कर रहा है, what is the wrongdoing that he or she is doing, right? The data is not there, but the data is created. That is called as fabrication of the data, right? The data is tailored according to your convenience. It is called as falsification of data. And the third one is somebody else's data is there, you make some minor changes, or even if you don't make any minor change, you take the entire data as it is, it accounts to what is called as plagiarism. Nowadays everyone talks about plagiarism, and my dear students, because you are right now in your coursework of PhD, and later on you will be launching your career. Okay, some of the attendees in this group might be already faculties, they might be teachers, they might be teaching, right? But always remember, plagiarism is a very big problem in any form of research, including scientific research. The reason is because research itself means originality. Okay, anything that duplicates, is not original, accounts for plagiarism. That can also be something as simple as copying the data, copying the diagrams, copying the photographs, and most importantly, which is very common, copying the language, right? पूरे के पूरे paragraphs copy करके paste हो जाते हैं, and that causes the plagiarism, right? So any plagiaristic activity, falsification or fabrication, accounts to the third important category, research misconduct. Research misconduct. So यहाँ पे जो, if you can see on the right side of your screen, I have given color code, right? Light color, gray color, and dark black. Okay, this is in the increasing degree of the increasing degree of magnanimity and seriousness of the crime that has been committed in the field of research practice, right? If a person has done some research which is not reproducible, okay, so that is responsible research, conduct of research nahi hua hai, right? But if a person has done some error by mistake, ignorance, so then it is sloppy science. But if a person has done plagiarism, then it is a serious misconduct. Okay, so these three things you should always remember, and this, so to say, forms the essence of my talk. Okay, now what are the determinants of bad practice? Like what happens, right? So number one is the system, that is where there is always a publication pressure, there is hyper competition, and low risk, high rewards, right? I will explain this giving an example. Especially people who are young researchers may not be able to understand it totally, but people who are already in job, okay, they will be able to understand that there is always a publication pressure. Bhaiya, paper publish karo, paper publish karo. The head of the department says paper publish karo. Vice chancellor also tells you, please publish papers. This is not done. NAC ka rating nahi aayega acha. You have to publish good papers. So there is a pressure. Okay, there is hyper competition. अरे उसका पेपर आ गया, उसका आ गया, तुम्हारा क्यों नहीं आया? People are asking. So there is always a competition. Then low risk, high reward is something which you need to understand, that there is copying the data. There is not much risk. You are not going to die, right? But rewards are high. अगर निकल गया, then you will get promotion. You will get all perks, benefits, right? So that is why there is always a the system which is the determinant of bad practice are these important things, right? Then the next one is the culture. Generally, uh, a person who is street smart, मतलब ऐसे जिसको बहुत सारे ideas आते हैं to bypass the rules, okay, he is considered to be a role model. So wrong role model is another problem, okay. Insufficient mentoring, the guide is not paying attention to the student, is something which cannot be accepted. Let us accept that, right? So insufficient mentoring is also a problem. I will add one thing here: wrong mentoring. If your mentor, if your guide is also telling you, हाँ चाल से आटलू करी ना, it's okay, it's again nothing, not done, okay, it's wrong, right? So no, RCR education and no clear guidance. I have summed it up in this only: insufficient mentoring, right? So the other 2 points are a part of insufficient mentoring, and the third is individual. Okay, individual means व्यक्तिगत खुद का उसके justifying misbehavior. हाँ तो આટલું તો કર્યું એમાં શું થયું, okay, એમ આમાંથી લઈ લીધું એમાં શું થયું, that is your justifying your misbehavior, right? एक तो आप गलती कर रहे हो and on the top of it you are justifying that, well, I have not done any mistake, right? Then there is conflict of interest. You are telling your friend, okay, submit the paper in the review panel or in the editorial board, my sir is there, he will look after it. Or your sir is there in the review panel, I am submitting a paper, please look after it. So actually this is there are vested interests, okay, so they are conflicting. Or if the person is from the rival group, let him submit the paper, I will see how the paper is accepted, right? So there is always a conflict, right? So conflict of interest is another individual thing which is important. Moral attitudes, I have already told about it. And personality traits, some people, they are generally so negative. Some people, they have a depressive tendency. They simply cannot appreciate anybody else. कुछ भी हो वो नहीं, उसका तो बराबर नहीं है, वो भी बराबर नहीं, वो मैं करता हूँ वही बराबर, right? So this is something very individual. That does not mean the entire scientific fraternity is bad. That does not at all mean that all the journals are bad. Some editor, some reviewer, somewhere in some journal, it's a very individual trait that it might be a personality trait. The person may give such a this thing. So good journals, they have options where a review is sent to you, where the review says your paper is rejected. You can always contest that review. Okay, you feel your review is good, you can write to the editor-in-chief that, and I'm telling you from my own experience, I've written to the editor-in-chief that this is not done, please change the review. And the editor-in-chief, I'm telling you again, if it's a good journal, the editor-in-chief has to change the reviewer and send it to another neutral reviewer, right? And the paper has been reviewed. Yeah, but if the next reviewer also gives the same comment, then there is no second chance. Okay, you get one chance to change the reviewer, right? Then if it is changed, if it is again rejected twice, then well, you have to make an introspection. अपने अंदर झांकिए और देखिए कि भाई कहाँ हमसे खुद से गलती हो रही है, वो सुधारो दुनिया को सुधारने से, right? So there is an option where if there is an individual negative that is spoiling your research, that is spoiling your research network, then you can always make an appeal. Now, there's something called as ranking research misbehavior, right? So 60 items are ranked, and how often will this misbehavior occur? Very rarely. Or if it occurs, how large will it be impacting, the validity of the knowledge? So these are such questionnaires, studies have been done in the past. I will just skip this slide because I've already talked about it. Let me emphasize on this point again. What is the meaning of falsification and fabrication of data, and what is the difference between the two, right? Falsification of the data means you are manipulating the research instrumentation, materials, or processes, right? Whereas fabrication of the data is you are not just manipulating, but you are making additions to the data. Okay, and additions to the data are such, ऐसा काम जो आपने किया ही नहीं है, ठीक है, that is added as a data is fabrication of the data, right? So the claims are based on incomplete or assumed results from the fabrication, right? So there are some incomplete results or absolutely assumed results. You have not done anything at all, yet you have been able to create or make a data which is absolutely fabricated, right? So that is called as fabrication of the data, because these are two terms which are kind of related but often loosely used or misinterpreted, like falsification and fabrication. So you should be able to understand the difference between the two, and both are coming under bad research practices. This I think I have told you, but I'll just go through it again. Why does selective reporting or misinterpretation of data occur? Right. So departmental publishing requirements for promotion कि भैया वो पेपर तो बे पेपर फरजियात कीधा છે, આપણે પબ્લિશ કરવા જ પડશે, નહીતર પ્રમોશન નહીં થાય. ઓકે, ઇન્ક્રીમેન્ટ નહીં થાય, because government is very strict about it. So then competitive pressures, then institutional, regional and national recognition, NAC and whatever, NIRF rankings and whatever. Then financial remuneration, well, all obviously linked with the promotion. Then media publicity. Oh my God. I mean, this is something which every researcher, if anyone gets media publicity, the other one is actually very jealous and also is craving for media publicity, often leading to misinterpretation, selective reporting, or कुछ आप काम करोगे तो कुछ डेटा मिलेगा, right? Any type of work you're doing, any survey or whatever you're doing, any experimental work you're doing, you will get some data, right? What is the use of this? Like how is the data managed? Okay, and what are the storage resources? Okay, that also plays a role. Then there is a time pressure. Okay, time pressure is another very important factor. દીકરી છે, PhD કરી રહી છે, પબ્લિકેશન થયું નથી, એના વગર થીસીસ સબમિટ નહીં થાય, ટાઈમ હવે સિનોપ્સિસ તો સબમિટ થઈ ગઈ છે, લગન નક્કી થઈ ગયા દીકરીના, જલ્દી જલ્દી પબ્લિકેશન પેલો કરાવો. So there is always a time pressure, right? And time pressure is very bad. The research, my dear friends, let me tell you one thing, has to be done by uncluttered mind which is not in pressure at all. Why every time the government is under the criticism that please do not influence the universities and colleges? The reason is because the university researchers in college and university should be not under any pressure, so that their minds are free and they can implement, they can do out of the box thinking and can think of some new innovative techniques and technologies in the field of their own research. Okay, if there is pressure, that too pressure of time, okay, it's not good. Honestly, let me tell you one thing, the entire idea of you have to publish 2 papers has also been criticized. Okay, that ऐसे कैसे have to publish, suppose data नहीं है तो result चाहिए वैसा नहीं है तो क्या करेंगे? All right, so publication जो है, that if the finding is good, obviously it will be published, but what if you have got negative results? I am coming to that. Okay, researchers do not feel well equipped or knowledgeable about how to publish their data. Now this is something which is, I will tell you with my own experience of almost now close to 15 plus years. Researchers in India, that too in Western India, I'm talking about Gujarat, do not feel well equipped or knowledgeable कि मेरे एरिया में, मेरे रिसर्च के टॉपिक में कौन सी जर्नल में मैं पब्लिश करूं, ओके, कहां पर पब्लिश करूं, कैसे पब्लिश करूं, right? Now, like if you want to do anything, you want to buy an equipment, that you have to either buy it through floating a tender, or you can buy it on the government e-marketplace, popularly called as the gem. But what if you have data? Where will you publish the data? Right? So for that purpose, the researchers need to feel well equipped. Right? Now, you as students who are appearing in the uh, um, for the research, what do you call it, the research training, right? PhD students training, you should know well in advance the work, the type of work that you're doing, and the data that you'll be generating. What will be the type of data that you'll be generating, and what type of journals publish this type of data? भैया, ये अगर आपको पहले से, अभी से, शुरुआत से आपको पता नहीं है, तो मैं बोलूंगा कि आप बहुत ही डेंजरस सिचुएशन में खड़े हैं और आगे बढ़ रहे हैं. Because if your data that you'll be generating at the end of 2 or 3 years or 4 years of your study is not worth, okay, ઘણા લોકો શું કે હું જે કરું છું ને એ કામ ક્યાં, એવું કામ ક્યાંય કોઈ મેં જર્નલમાં જોયું જ નથી. અરે ભાઈ, તમે એવું કામ શું કામ કરો છો? You will see it is cancer biology, right? Maximum research is done in the field of cancer biology. So you choose a field, you will say, sir, no data is available in this field. Well, obviously, cancer biology is well researched and maximum data is there in that field, right? So any person who's working in the field of cancer biology obviously will be getting more references, will be getting more cross references. If publishing in good journal, will be getting more citations also, right? So the choice of topic, the choice of research area also is important. Well, you might not be interested in cancer biology, not an issue. You might be interested in something very offbeat. Like, for example, you're interested in ornithology. Ornithology is study of birds. Okay, study of birds मतलब पक्षी, birds, उसके बारे में आप कोई भी research कर रहे हो. Now the thing is, if you say I am surveying the area of South Gujarat and preparing a checklist of birds, so at the end you will get a checklist of birds. That's it. आप उसको publish कहाँ करोगे? Right? There is no way you can publish anywhere. So actually, your research question that you have set up is poor. Okay. Then there are legal and ethical concerns. Some people, there are legalities. I mean, this can be a topic in itself. Legal and ethical concerns, where there are some things which are considered to be illegal. Well, here is a cartoon that shows that human caused climate change is the most important reason, and there are lots of people who opt for that, right? Whereas there's nothing like global warming. ऐसे बोलने वाले लोग कम हैं. Well, this is more of a philosophical statement about honesty, objectivity, and integrity in data interpretation, reporting the data. I have talked about it. Whatever result you have got, you should be able to honestly interpret whatever as the findings correctly. First of all, check the reproducibility, whether you are consistently getting the same results. If yes, then I will be giving an example, mere khud ka real life example at the end of my presentation. Okay. Now this is on the left of your screen, you can see a graph which is showing urea in the urine. Now, if you see the x-axis and the y-axis, as the osmotic pressure increases, the urea concentration also is found to be higher. Okay, every dot indicates one patient. That is what has been seen over here. So you can see that there is a trend loosely that as the urea is increasing, the osmotic pressure is also found to be increasing slowly and gradually. But on the right, if this is the data that you have got, which is like scattered everywhere, will you accept this as a data? Will the research journal accept it as a data? Will a scientific fraternity accept it as a data? The answer is no, right? So what do you do in that case? Obviously, you have to repeat the experiment. You have to redo it. There might be manual errors which you have not done properly. Okay. Now this can be anything, any data which is showing a linear decrement, maximum value फिर कम होते low and the least, right? Now this is not always true. This can never always be true. If you look at such a graph, uh, in the first look you will see it can be any data, right? That there is a decrement in the population of COVID patients. Let's assume for example, ये तो मैंने ऐसी example के लिए graph लिया है, but it can be the decrement in the population of COVID positive patients, right? पहले इतना था, अभी इतना है, अभी इतना है, अभी इतना है, right? But you look at the graph carefully, statistically it is not significant. There is no deviation bar. Significant has not been marked, right? So there is no mention of the population size also. Like when the first survey was done, how many people were counted? Okay. And when the last was done, how many people were counted? Like if you count only 10 and 10 में से एक जन है तो तुमने वो mark कर दिया. So that is not a good sample size, right? So to plot such a graph, the number of COVID patients counted should be always the same. So if you are counting, say, 1,000 patients, it should always be 1,000, okay, from the first till the last. And it should be from the same geographical area. It cannot be from different geographical areas, right? Only then you will get the exact trend. Then what do you think about this data? The left versus right, okay? If you see that on the left side, the bar diagram shows there is some increment, there is some decrement, right? So you will say, well, there is an initial decrease followed by a moderate increase. But if you look at the deviation bar carefully, none of the values are significant, okay? None of the values are significant. So you need to understand at least that much of statistics to be able to make out. Otherwise, what will happen is misinterpretation of the data, right? Same way, the graph which is on the right side, you can see there are big deviation bars, also suggesting that 1, 2, 3, the 3 blue bars, none of them are significant, right? So it means that there is no change, right? Whatever higher or lower values have been found, there is actually no change, right? So this is the correct interpretation. Otherwise, you can have a erroneous interpretation. Acha. Well, I don't want to sound political, but this is something which is very important that you should know as students of science. In science, they say there are 2 types of lies. One is an actual fabricated lie, and the other one is a statistical lie, right? You can make a non-significant data significant by removing certain values, okay? By removing certain values. This is a very easy game for a person who is expert in statistics, right? That is why I said How to Lie with Statistics is the book, the cover page of the book. You should understand how to do this. See, because if you are lying with the data, first thing first, you are propagating bad science. And the second thing is you are setting up a wrong precedent. Well, now the person is equally equipped, who is a reviewer, he is equally equipped and he will catch your lie. Okay, and he will catch your lie, so automatically your data will never ever get published in a good peer-reviewed journal with an impact factor. Okay, with a good impact factor, it will never be published. Okay, so you will be publishing in a standard journal. It may or may not be a UGC care journal. Even a UGC care journal can be not up to the mark, and you may be able to get the data through. But the moment you go in at the higher levels, immediately your data, you will be ashamed that you have published such a research paper. All right. Now this data actually talks about the ethical issues of data reporting, that there can be a failing to include the number of eligible participants versus there's something called as what is called as data dredging, right? So, well, inaccurate reporting of missing data points, failing to report all pertinent data, and failing to report negative results is very important, right? So you don't report negative results. सिर्फ अच्छा ही बताओगे. आजकल है ना, there is a lot of study that is being done. I'll come to that. What do you mean by negative results? Allowing research sponsors to influence reports. That is, a funding agency influences your results. then inappropriate labeling is done, right? You can play around with the y-axis and then you can manipulate the data. Then there is, splitting the data into multiple publications. It's called as data dredging, right? So what do? You have done a study. Now this is a complete study. There is no small subset of this study. This is a complete study. What do? You split the studies into 3 parts and publish it as 3 research papers. That is called as data dredging, right? So inappropriate use of terminology without precise definitions, that is, you use any wrong terminology, and reporting conclusions that is not supporting the data. Like for example, a person from chemistry synthesizing anything, okay, anything, what I mean is um, a nanoparticle or uh, a chemical derivative, okay, a metal complex modification, making series of metal complexes. What do they claim? They claim it to be having anti-cancer property, right? Or a person who's working with herbal compounds also claims to have anti-cancer property of their extract, right? Now, what you're doing here is, first thing first, your conclusion is too big. Okay, how have you proved the anti-cancer potential? As not this one, just a minute, yeah. How can you prove that it is having an anti-cancer potential? You have to raise the standards of your preclinical research, right? Now, how a preclinical research is done? You take the synthesized compound, you are testing it with the cells in culture, which are cancer cells. That is what I do also. And then the cells die, right? The cells are dying. You conclude that the cancer cells are killed by my herbal extract, or the cancer cells are killed by the chemical compound that has been synthesized, so it is having anti-cancer property. मैं फिर से बताता हूं, अगर आपको समझ में नहीं आया हो तो, आपके पास कैंसर सेल्स हैं, आपने कोई कंपाउंड सिंथेसाइज किया है, या फिर आपके पास में कोई हर्बल एक्सट्रैक्ट है, you are testing that on the cancer cells and the cancer cells die. You find out the dose at which the cancer cells are getting killed, and you say that at this dose, this particular compound is having anti-cancer potential. ऐसे इतने सारे पेपर्स आते हैं, but how many actually become into a medicine? None, nothing. Okay, why? The reason is because the standards of preclinical research in the field of cancer is not good. Okay, it has to be, to make a claim that it is having an anti-cancer potential, has to be really very, very high. Okay, you cannot make a claim straight away. So what happens then? If you're making a claim, then you can see what I have written in red. It leads to what is called as research waste. Okay, just garbage. There is a lot of research that keeps on accumulating like a garbage, right? And then it may lead to an unethical situation also, right? It may lead to an unethical situation also. But there is one sentence which I have written here: when negative studies are rarely published, positive studies are likely to be chance findings. Okay, so negative results, भाई आप कोई भी कंपाउंड बनाते हो सिंथेसाइज करके, and then you are testing it on cancer cells, and if the cancer cells are not dying, as a basic scientist you should be able to interpret that why this particular synthesized compound did not kill the cancer cells. I will give an example. I am in the Department of Zoology. I've got a good animal cell culture lab. My collaborator from chemistry came. She told me, मैंने silver nanoparticles बनाए हैं, which are having anti-cancer property. It is proved. Then I have flaxseed oil, which is also an anti-cancer agent. So I have used flaxseed oil to stabilize, as a stabilizing agent, and form the silver nanoparticles. Fantastic. It will be like a double whammy to kill the cancer cells. I tested that. And guess what I found? It was not having any anti-cancer potential at all. It was not killing the cancer cells. I tested again. Of course, my student tested again, and she found out the cells don't die. She came to me with the data. Sir, इसमें कुछ दम नहीं है. The cells are not dying. Then I told my collaborator, and she was furious. गुस्सा हो गए वो. अरे वो तो ये देखो, एक बाजू है सिल्वर नैनो पार्टिकल, दूसरे बाजू है फ्लेक्सिड ऑयल, दोनों भी एंटी कैंसर हैं, और ये दोनों मिल गए तो कितना जोरदार एंटी कैंसर होना चाहिए. अरे भैया, नहीं मरते हैं ऐसे कैंसर सेल्स. ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड. सो आई सेड, बोले कि अच्छा छोड़ो, जाने दो, फिर नहीं करना है. आई सेड नो, दिस इज ऑल्सो ए फाइंडिंग रिपोर्टेड एज अ नेगेटिव फाइंडिंग. ओके, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज ए नेगेटिव फाइंडिंग. इसका मतलब ये है कि आपने ये अगर पब्लिश कर दिया और जर्नल एक्सेप्ट करता है नेगेटिव रिजल्ट हो तो भी, if you have done a good experiment and come across a negative result, this is a big favor to the entire scientific fraternity कि भैया ऐसा नहीं करो, ऐसे से रिजल्ट नहीं आता है. Just for your knowledge, after I finish my lecture, you can search Journal of Negative Research. It is having almost 3 or 4 impact factor. It is a high impact journal which is only publishing negative results. That ये किया नहीं आया, ये प्लस ये नहीं आया, this plus this, no result, this plus this, negative result, right? So this plus, like a person who gets cancer, you give hyperdose of vitamins, multivitamins, the cancer grows faster, the person dies faster. Okay, this is a negative result which has already been published, right? So that is why if a person is not yet developed cancer, vitamins good. But if you are giving multivitamins and mineral supplements to a person who already has cancer, the person is likely to die fast. The entire molecular mechanism has been worked out. So, if you are asking relevant questions, you're designing the protocol appropriately, and your full publication is accessible, and you're reporting unbiased. Actually, up to 85% of the research waste which is right now being generated can be avoided. Okay. Now, how do you assess? Well, it's easy to say that by sir ने बोल दिया कि relevant question होना चाहिए, appropriate design होना चाहिए. But is my research question relevant or not? Or is my design appropriate or not? That is judged by your RDC. Okay. Your Research and Development Council, which is then your departmental research committee, they will be judging whether or not the design is appropriate or not, right? So if you feel your RDC is not able to do justice, you are likely to be at a loss as a student. So make sure that you yourself are able to assess the merit of your research question and adapt an appropriate design, okay, for conducting the experiments, so that your data does not become a research waste. So hundreds and thousands of people have taken part in clinical research, but never ever negative result is being published, right? Like everyone talks about the study that has been done with remdesivir and the positive and negative impacts of remdesivir, and whatever studies have been done in remdesivir. But along with remdesivir, there were several other medicines for COVID-19 that were being simultaneously tested, which have been tested to be negative. Nobody knows about them, right? They never come in the public domain, and they are never published. I don't know. I mean, that should be brought to light. Okay. So the sad news is the slow rate of adoption, especially I'm referring to the clinical research. 50% of the registered data is not published. 50% of the published data is not registered. That is the problem. The same problem we are facing in Ayurveda also, where 50% of the published data is not registered. And then, the room of improvement is an inspiring example of other disciplinary fields. That is an inspiring example. So what happens is, how do you motives, like how do you bring in transparency? So first thing, you identify publishing and reporting bias. Okay, you first identify that. You identify other questionable research practices. Okay, what are questionable research practices? You first need to identify that. Then replication of data analysis with the same protocol or with other design should not be repetitive. Okay, and reuse of the data, that is the secondary data that has been generated by you, again should not be there. So these are the conditions for transparency, where there should be adequate skill, system, facilities, blah, blah, blah. That has been, I'm not going into the details of this. This I've already talked about. Yes, हिंदी और गुजराती दोनों में कहावत है कि कुएं का मेंढक, right? They are in the same well, and there is no global or international exposure to a researcher. It will always cause wrong interpretation of the data, right? यहाँ तीन मेंढक है, you can see one is saying it's a slowly boiling pan, the other one says this is a pot, the third one says it's a kettle, right? But actually, what are they debating on? Climate change summit, right? So if there is a lack of international exposure, these problems are bound to be there. All right. Now let me talk about a research which was done by me. This is, I will give you quickly an idea of what is this research all about. It is in the field of toxicology. I don't work in the field of toxicology. ये एक लड़की के का research मैंने करवाया था, where I was looking at the toxic infestation of titanium dioxide nanoparticles on developing chick embryo. Means जो चिकन होता है, मुर्गी होता है, उसका जो एम्ब्रियो है, उसका डेवलपमेंट में क्या डिफॉर्मिटी होता है, वो देखना था. तो ये मैंने डेवलपमेंटल डिफॉर्मिटी का स्टडी किया था. ये मैं आपको क्यों बता रहा हूँ, क्योंकि इसके एसोसिएटेड देयर इज अ स्टोरी. माय स्टूडेंट वाज वेरी गुड. आई न्यू दैट. आई वाज मोटिवेटिंग हर. वन फाइन डे आई आस्क्ड हर व्हाट आर द रिजल्ट्स. शी वाज लाइक, सर आई हैव नॉट डन. मुझे थोड़ा टाइम दो, मैंने भी किया नहीं पूरा रिजल्ट, मुझे कंपाइल करना बाकी है. आई सेड ओके. Actually, she had done the experiments, but she had got negative result. Means क्या? Low dose, medium dose, higher dose, highest dose of titanium dioxide nanoparticle should have toxicity lowest, थोड़ा ज्यादा, एकदम ज्यादा, बहुत ज्यादा. That is how the graph should be. She had got the graph ulta. Lowest dose was showing highest toxicity, and then there was a drop in toxicity, and the highest dose was non-toxic. उसको लगा कि कुछ गलती हो गई मेरे से. She did it again. She thought सर गुस्सा हो जाएंगे, so she did it again. मुझे पता नहीं है. मैंने बोला भाई डेटा हो गया, और 10 दिन हो गए थे. बोले सर वो थोड़ा गड़बड़ हो गया है डेटा, मैं फिर से एक बार करती हूँ. वेल इट्स वेरी गुड, नथिंग लाइक इट, करो. शी रिपीटेड द रिजल्ट्स अगेन गॉट द सेम रिजल्ट्स, एंड मैंने मेरे स्टूडेंट्स को स्ट्रिक्ट इंस्ट्रक्शंस दिए हैं, व्हाट एवर रिजल्ट्स यू आर गेटिंग, यू हैव टू शो मी द रिजल्ट्स जस्ट लाइक दैट, नेवर मैनिपुलेट द डेटा. शी शोड द रिजल्ट्स टू मी. आई सेड रिजल्ट्स तो बिल्कुल गलत है. She started crying. बोले सर मुझे पता है, पर मैंने आपको बताया नहीं, मैंने 3 बार रिपीट किया है, और तीनों बार मैंने बहुत ध्यान से किया है. I have got the same results. I said, I believe you. Let us now sit with the results and try to find out what can be the reason. Now, when I met a chemist in the Central University of Gujarat, Dr. Mansingh. Professor Mansingh was a fantastic chemist. I asked him, I said, sir, ऐसे मुझे toxicity में results मिल रहे हैं. The titanium dioxide nanoparticles, do they lose their toxicity when the dose is high? He said, what results have you got? I told him the results. I said, and I'm sure about it. He said, your results are very correct. I said, sir, I think maybe the nanoparticles are toxic, but they agglomerate as the dose increase, and the nano becomes macro, and then they are non-toxic. He said, yes, you're right. I said, but sir, this is my assumption. How can we prove it? He said, we can prove it certainly. I have an instrument, which is my own patent. and I will prove it. I can do experiments on that. And my dear students and friends, let me tell you, the results were fantastic, just as we expected. And this is my publication in Nature Scientific Reports, which was published in 2018, right? So with this, I come towards the end of my, there's a couple of slides are remaining. Then if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take that. But here you can see this paper is available online, and this is a classic case of how a wrong interpretation could have otherwise led to a totally different result. Okay, because the data was interpreted correctly, right? So what do we conclude? We conclude that there should not be sloppy science. It is a larger evil than the misconduct. Especially selective reporting is very bad. It threatens the validity and efficacy of the data. There should be more transparency, right? Imandari in science, it's very, very important, right? Then the factors in the system, culture, and the individual, they should be holding back. They should not be affecting your science. They should not be affecting your research. We must change the reward system and face our dilemmas. A lot of the problem, if you see fabricated data, it is there from China. The reason is because they have a reward system. एक publication high impact करोगे तो इतने पैसे मिलेंगे, ठीक है? वो जब से start किया चाइना में, the number of fabricated or plagiaristic data has increased significantly from China, right? But still China dominates the scientific world, but the reward system is under severe criticism over there. Okay, even high impact papers like the PLOS One, they report such things. Determinants of selective reporting, a taxonomy based on content analysis of random selection of literature. You can read this paper from PLOS One. A lot of the information which I showed here has been taken from this paper. Okay, this is the last slide which I wanted to show you. Have a look at this slide carefully. The person who is showing the specimen is being interpreted by different people differently as a cat, rabbit, snail, dog, elephant, goat, cow, or a frog, or even a mouse. None in, and giraffe also, yeah. None in the audience is interpreting it correctly. You should have the wisdom to know it is a duck, and you should have the intellectual ability and scientific expertise to report it as a duck, right? Just because everyone says something else and then you just go by majority, okay, yeah, majority are telling that this is a cow because it is white in color, let us now call it as a cow, and you report it as a cow, is a wrong way of reporting science. Well, with this, these are my sources from I've taken from internet.